Barbdation, welcome back to my absolute all-time favorite barbarian build that I have ever played in this game in every single season. We are running Whirlwind, Hammer of the Ancients. This is a throwback to Season 2. I wanted to see if we could get this to work. This was the premier build, the cream of the crop, and then we had the nerf hammer. Came down on Hammer of the Ancients real hard, and Hammer of the Ancients hasn't recovered until now. We are back to doing billions of damage with this. This is not a Whirlwind build. This is a weapon swap Hammer of the Ancients build. I'm going to break down the entire thing for you, how it works, why we're running Whirlwind, and then why we're also running Hammer of the Ancients, and how Hammer of the Ancients is the damage dealer and not Whirlwind. Check out this run first, and then we're going to hop into the gear. All right. Oopsies. Oh, 900 million. Let's grab a big group here. Yeah, Cash. Everybody is kind of having some issues with it tonight. I think that's what everybody's talking about right now. Come on, everybody, group up. There we go. It looks like I'm behind the timer right now, but I actually think I'm going to start catching up pretty quickly. This vortex is really, really fun. I think that Steel Grasp might still be a little bit better, but then I don't have to stop my Whirlwind. I can just keep on casting. And eventually everything gets pulled in. Just like that. And as long as I can like look down and see when the vortex is about to cast, then I can like get within range of all of everything and then pull everything in. The key to this though is I just like slowly kite backwards. So I keep on moving closer and closer to the next monsters. And as long as I do that, when Vortex goes off, I just slowly pull into the next group. See, like, Vortex is about to go off. I stay close to everything, and now everything pulls in. working. Let's get everything close. And we get a vortex, pull everything in. Vortex again, pull everything in. And what's fun about this is that they're always moving. You always know, like if you see something on the ground, you can move out of it as you're moving through. So you can get out of crowd, like right here, I can move to the edge and still keep on attacking. Growing streamers. We have a whole channel in this cache, a whole channel in Discord that's kind of dedicated to like helping new streamers. So if you want to, you guys are more than welcome to join. But what, like the best advice that I can do is, or give anybody, is get used to talking to nobody. Feels weird, but get used to talking to nobody. And then for me, it was not Twitch. Twitch is actually really hard to break into because there's so many streamers out there. It was YouTube that did it for me. I make content on YouTube also. I have a bunch of build guides. Yeah, talking to yourself is important. You have to be able to carry on a conversation as a new streamer as if you're talking to a whole bunch of people when there's nobody there. It's very weird. And it's not an easy thing to do or to get used to. There are a lot of people that do like narrative streams. Like they basically just narrate everything they're doing, which works. But also how it's also a slow journey. It's not something that you that comes right away. I've been streaming for I was streaming for what, close to 2 years now. I think November will be 2 years, and it took me a long time to figure out how to get some success, but that was actually YouTube. Making content was what did it for me. And then it has to be content that obviously people find useful or helpful or want to watch. But it was making content for me that did it. You also have to be cross-eyed and read everything. Yes, yes. Yep, you have to be able to multitask and play, and it's not necessarily about the game, because like I'm not a top-tier gamer. But I just like to hang out with people, have fun. Oh, 1 billion, 1 billion, 1 billion. So yeah, it's tough. It's not an easy thing to break into. It takes a lot of work. Lot of hours. It's very consistent, you have to be. I do use a green screen, but I didn't up until about 3 weeks ago, I think. I used a program that took away the image on the screen. But then actually somebody got Megaboo, well, I'm not sure if it's in the stream right now or not, got me the green screen off my wish list, which was incredibly generous. So then I was able to use a green screen, which took away all of the lag that I was experiencing on the camera. I also run 2 PCs. But you have to be in for a grind. Like if you want to make streaming work, you have to be in for a grind. Be consistent. Pick a streaming schedule that works for you. Just basically what it is. For those following the guides, I'll catch up on the longer things in just a second, but I want to get through this dungeon. Damn. Oh, they're super elite. The super elites are the worst. This is super elite with a suppressor. Will I am. Are you still in the stream? William? Will I am. Go. Massage gaming chair would actually be really nice. Let's see how we do here. See how this goes. We have 5 minutes to get through tier 85. I couldn't even get through tier 7 or 80 earlier today. We switched up the Paragon board and bam. Things are happening. $935 million. $57. We growing. Hey, thank you for the follow, Cachette. I appreciate it. Welcome to the Legion. And like I said, you guys are more than welcome to hop into Discord with the whole... we have almost 1,500 people in there. There's a lot of people that are super helpful. Lots of knowledge, lots of experience in there, so you guys are more than welcome. 1.07 bar billions of damage with Hammer of the Ancients. Hammer of the Ancients is back. Diablo 4 is amazing. I don't really compare games. If I'm having fun playing something, then I'm going to play it. So I've been having fun playing this game since it came out, and I haven't stopped. I haven't missed a single season. It is 100% a ton of fun. Whoa, hey buddy, let's calm down here. I'm trying to kill the boss here. Stop interrupting. Look at this. I have 3 stacks. 3 stacks. Just standing in everything. Nothing's happening. I mean, it's only tier 85. You don't have to move out of anything. I don't have to worry about anything hitting me. My leg doesn't move whatsoever. We are going to clear tier 85. 1.122 bar billions of damage. I had to hit the flip button. And we're not even masterworked. Glyphs aren't even 100 yet. We are going to be hitting for multiple 1.43 billion, 1.41. You know what it is? Slaying strikes kicking in. Come on. Come on. Bam. Love it. So that's the run. It is a work in progress. As you go through this video, you're going to see my masterworking is not great. My gear is not fantastic. I still have a lot of work to do with this build. This is just the start of it. And we are already through 85 very comfortably. I want to give a quick disclaimer. This build does use a lot of Uber Uniques. I'm running 4. Now, there are options. I do have other pieces of gear that I started off this build with. I will have 2 versions in the planner. If you do not have all of the gear required, you can still substitute it out for what I will have. So make sure you check the link in the description for the build guide planner. All right, we are going to hop into the skills. Starting at the top. We're going to use 2 points to unlock our next tree. 1 point into Whirlwind all the way down through Enhanced Whirlwind. This is just going to be to generate a little bit of fury and then give us a catalyst to get our Hammer of the Ancients to do more damage. We're going to be putting 5 points into Hammer of the Ancients, and we're going to go all the way down through Violent Hammer of the Ancients. What this is going to do, Hammer of the Ancients will now generate additional fury up to 30%. And that's going to stack up to 10 times. So when we hit 10 different targets with Hammer of the Ancients, we gain 30% additional Fury. That's important for this build. We're also going to be getting 40% increased damage when Hammer of the Ancients overpowers. Now, Hammer of the Ancients is going to overpower all the time, and it's going to be within that 5 seconds, so we should have this buff up all of the time. We're going to do 1 point to Pressure Point, and then we're going to do 3 points into Warpath. Every time that we overpower with Hammer of the Ancients, not only are we going to get that 40%, but we're also getting an additional 16% overpower damage here. Moving down, we're going to go 3 points into Imposing Presence. Imposing Presence is incredibly important because life equals more damage. We'll get to that when we get into the gear, and we'll talk about why. We're going to go 1 point in a Rallying Cry, all the way down through Strategic Rallying Cry. This is going to be our source of Fortify. We're going to go all the way down to Warcry. We're going to be putting 5 points into Warcry. We want to stack as much damage out of Warcry as we can. And for a little bit of extra boost, we're going to go into Power Warcry so we get that additional 10%. We're going to go 3 points into Booming Voice. This is going to increase the duration of our shouts. And we're going to go 3 points into Raid Leader for some passive healing whenever our shouts are active. We're going to be taking Leap. Leap is going to be our source of movement and just a little bit of Fury generation if you need it throughout the fight. Sometimes, if you're not paying attention, you may run out of Fury. This is a really great way to get that back. It also is just one of my favorite abilities to use. It is so much fun. We're going to be doing 1 point into Aggressive Resistance so that we can unlock Prolific Fury. We're going to take 3 points into Prolific Fury. This is going to give us 24% increased Fury generation when we are berserking. We're going to be berserking all of the time, and when we get to the gear section, we'll show you exactly why. We're going to do 3 points into Pit Fighter. This is going to give us up to 12% increased damage to close, and then some damage reduction from distant enemies. And then we're going to do 3 points into Slaying Strikes. We're going to deal 20% increased damage against injured enemies. We're going to be doing 1 point into Thick Skin so we can unlock Counteroffensive. When we take 3 points into Counteroffensive, this is going to give us 16% increased damage while we have over 50% of our maximum life is fortified. You will be fortified 100% of the time, so this will be active all of the time. We're going to go 3 points into Heavy Handed. This is going to give us 20% increased critical strike damage when we're using a two-handed weapon. We're going to use a two-handed weapon for both abilities. We're going to be doing 3 points into Brute Force. You're going to deal 32% increased overpower damage with that two-handed weapon. 3 points in a Wallop. Your skills using a bludgeoning weapon, which is what we're going to be using for Hammer of the Ancients, because Hammer of the Ancients has to use a bludgeoning weapon, is going to deal 20% increased multiplicative damage to stunned or vulnerable enemies. Everything is going to be vulnerable all of the time. We're going to do 3 points into Furious Impulse. We need this 8 Fury every time that we swap weapons. This is a weapon swap build. And when we get to the gameplay loop, I'll show you the importance of this Fury and why we need it. We're going to go into Invigorating Fury. We're going to get 3 points here. This is going to give us 12% of our maximum life whenever we spend 100 Fury. Hammer of the Ancients is going to cost 70 Fury. So this is going to be every 2 swings, or every weapon swap between Hammer of the Ancients and Whirlwind is going to give us back 12% of our life. We heal very, very quickly. It's awesome to see. We're going to go 2 points into Wrath of the Berserker, and then we're going to go all the way down through Supreme Wrath of Berserker. Now, I tested this build over and over and over again using Wrath of the Berserker versus Call of the Ancients, and Wrath of the Berserker actually hits harder for this. Last season, Call of the Ancients was used everywhere, but for some reason this season, I am hitting harder with Wrath of the Berserker. I don't know what changed, haven't figured it out yet, but if I do, I will update everybody. For the key passive, we're going to be running Unbridled Rage. Now, the reason that we are not running Unconstrained, the way that this reads, the berserking damage bonus, which the current berserking damage bonus right now is 25%. You're going to gain 25% all the time. That 25% is going to be increased to 60%, which means that you're only gaining a 35% increase to a multiplier that you already have. So you're just increasing that multiplier a little bit. When you look at Unbridled Rage is a completely separate multiplier. So it's taking your already 25% of your damage while berserking and then multiplying it by that 45% for all of your core skills. So this is actually a very big increase to your damage over Unconstrained. So that's the skill tree. Let's take a look at the Paragon board and we'll start to break down exactly why it is really important that we're running a weapon swap build and what is going to make this whole thing run. In the starter board, and the way that glyphs work and the way that Paragon boards work this season, make sure that when you start this out, you do not follow a board that is all 300 points in. You want to just unlock every single glyph and every single legendary node first in the 5 boards. You can only have 5. Then you're going to branch out into all of the extra damage and all of the extra survivability that you need. Unlock all of the glyphs and all of the legendary nodes first. In the starter board, we're going to be running Crusher. And when your glyphs hit level 46, they unlock a legendary power. That's the multiplicative number that's on the bottom. For Crusher, we're going to get an increased multiplicative to just straight damage. This is also going to give us a 20% increase overpower damage. In the next board, this is the absolute key. You cannot run this build without this here. We're going to be running Weapon Master. Swapping a weapon is going to grant 8% of our maximum Fury. So adding Fury is important, but we don't need to do it like we're running a Rabalades. We just need enough max Fury that when we swap, we get back enough more than 70. So this is going to be the 100% absolutely mandatory node. If you don't have this, you don't get your Fury back, and then the build does not work. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Dominate. This is going to give us some additive damage to our overpower, and then we're also going to get a guaranteed overpower every 15 seconds. The legendary bonus is a multiplicative increased damage to overpower. In the next board, we're going to be running Blood Rage. Killing a bleeding enemy has a 10% chance to grant berserking for 5 seconds. Your damage is increased by 10% of your damage while berserking bonus, up to a maximum of 30%. Currently, we're running 30%. And what does that mean? If you look at your damage while berserking bonus here, I'm currently running 310%. I don't have any tempers at all. That 310% just comes from the Paragon board. So if we look here, 310%, you take 10% of that, which is 31, and then that gives you your maximum bonus. As you're going through your Paragon boards and you want to start maximizing points and min-maxing things, now if I take out 10, I'm still at 30%. So I can now move those points around. So if you're going to feel out your characters, you're going to figure out where they're going to go. For the video, we're going to just leave it right there. This will be your board because your glyphs may be at a different point than mine are. Your character might be a better spot than mine is, or you may be just starting out. So put all of the nodes in that you can until this reaches 30%. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Ire. This is where I get some of that damage while berserking bonus from. We get 60% because it adds to that bonus. We're also going to be taking 10% reduced damage, and we're going to deal multiplicative increased damage to close enemies here. Options for this if you want to. You can swap something out into this that is completely offensive if you can get your damage while berserking bonus without this. One temper on either a ring or on a sword will get you enough to get you to that bonus, and then you can swap this out for a completely offensive. You don't have to worry about that 10% reduced damage there. In the next board, we're going to be running Decimator. Each time you make an enemy vulnerable, your damage is increased by 10% for 5 seconds. Overpowering a vulnerable enemy grants you an additional 10% bonus for 5 seconds. We will have vulnerable damage up all of the time because of our gear and because of the lucky hit chance on Hammer of the Ancients, and we'll cover that a little bit later when we get to the gear section. Inside of this, we're going to be running Might. If you look, we're getting up to almost 100% increase overpower damage for this magic node because of Might. It's a big source of overpower damage because we have this specific glyph here. If you want to run a different multiplier here, you can put something like Revenge in here that might actually boost your damage. We'll be testing. This is the first end game version of this build, so I'm super excited. We still have a lot to figure out. What else this does is going to give us 8% increased damage while wielding a two-handed weapon, and then increase multiplicative damage to healthy enemies. So that's where this one is going to fall off, because healthy enemies is anything above 80. So once the monsters dip below 80%, you're not getting this multiplier. So in future ones, this may change. I'm still figuring out what we want to do and in what way to take this build, but this is going to be what we're going to be running for now. And then make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all of these builds. The description of the video will have the planner. Follow along in the planner. I've been keeping my planners updated as the season has been going on, as we've been figuring things out. So make sure, if you haven't checked out a planner before, make sure that you do it, because it is much easier than pausing the video and then adding in all the points. You can follow along on the planner. You can zoom in, zoom out. It's very, very useful. For the final board, we're going to be running Carnage. While berserking, which we'll be doing 100% of the time, critical strikes are going to increase your attack speed by up to 16%. Attack speed is important not just by how fast we can hammer. The more attack speed you have, the faster you can swap between Whirlwind and between Hammer of the Ancients. So attack speed is actually very key to this build. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Wrath. Skills that critically hit are going to generate Fury for us. We need to generate Fury on our weapon swaps. We're also going to get an increased critical strike damage bonus. And then this is also going to be adding critical strike damage. Now we're going to be running a Grandfather with this build. That is going to take the critical strike damage bonus and multiply it. So this is a very, very important glyph for our damage here. Now let's hop into the gear and take a look at how this all comes together. For the gear, for the helmet, we're going to be running the Harlequin's Crest. The reduced cooldown reduction is going to be amazing. A GA to max life is actually going to be a very big bonus to your damage because max life is going to increase your overpower damage. When you look at what overpower damage says, further increased at the moment of impact based on your maximum life and your fortify amount. The more we have fortify and the more our life goes up, the more that overpower damage does. So life is actually a huge boost. So having the GA on the cooldown reduction is great. Cooldowns are through the roof, but you want to make sure that you get as much life out of this build as you possibly can. For the chest piece, we're going to be running the Shroud of False Death. Again, a GA on max life here is optimal. We don't need the generation. We're going to have enough with the build. So obviously you can't pick and choose which ones you get. I haven't gotten to get the ones that I wanted, but that is what the optimal setup is going to be, and that will be in the planner. Now, just looking at this chest piece, it really doesn't look all too impressive, except for that thing that it says right below where it says the armor amount. +1 to all of your passives. If you go into the skill tree and you take a look, we have blue marks in every single one of the passives. That means that they're all active because of the Shroud of False Death. Generally, we take 1 point to Outburst and 1 point to Tough as Nails. This is a 1-2 punch for bleed damage. Now, we don't actually have to take it because we're running the Shroud of False Death. It increases all of our damage, all of our damage reduction. It is incredibly strong. We get things like hamstring. So now we're actually going to be slowing enemies when we normally wouldn't be doing that before. This is a really, really powerful chest piece, and that is the reason that we're running this chest piece. For the gloves, we're going to be running Anger Management. This is going to keep our berserking up 100% of the time. So we'll have that, all of that increased damage. We'll have the Fury generation. This is going to be the key to making sure we have constant damage. For the affixes here, we're going to be running Max Life, Attack Speed, Hammer of the Ancients. And then for the tempers, we're going to be running Berserk Duration, and then we're going to be running Critical Strike Damage. For the tempers, this is almost bricked, so I haven't rolled out of Berserk Duration, but what we want to be running is the increased size to your Hammer of the Ancients and then Critical Strike Damage. Because we're going to be running Anger Management, you don't need Berserk Duration on this. You will have Berserking 100% of the time, so you want to be running, increase that hammer size so you can hit more as your runs go on so you can run them faster. For the pants, we're going to be running To Bolt's Will. This is going to give us an increase of damage. We're going to be unstoppable pretty much all of the time. We have 2 sources of unstoppable with this build, plus we have Yen's, so it's going to cast unstoppable pretty much 100% of the time. We're going to get that 20% increased damage. And then maximum life and then max resource is really what you want to run for this. The rest of them, you don't really need all too much. For the boots, we're going to be running Yen's Blessing. For this one here, the GA on your all resistances is going to help when you get to a certain point in the Paragon board. The GA on all resistances doesn't really matter all too much, but right now we're currently capped, so this is working perfectly. What Yen's does, casting a skill has a 50% chance to cast a non-mobility, non-ultimate skill that is currently on cooldown. We're going to be casting skills all the time. We're going to be using Hammer of the Ancients and Whirlwind. So we have a 50% chance to cast either Warcry or Rallying Cry. If we time it just right, most of the time Rallying Cry will be up, and that is optimal because that will give us 100% unstoppable. For the bludgeoning weapon, we're going to be running Ancestral Force. Your Hammer of the Ancients is going to quake outward, and then we're also going to get a 40% increased damage. Double that bonus against bosses. That's huge. So 80% increased damage against bosses. You really notice it. For the affixes, you're going to be earning Strength, Max Life, Overpower damage. I have been testing the difference between critical strike damage and overpower damage, and I think that from what I've seen, the overpower damage is actually going to do more. I'm going to continue testing, and again, follow the planner because we'll update, and I'll have more notes in there for you guys when we figure this out 100%. The Tempers, we're going to be running overpower damage, and then we're going to be running Chance for Hammer of the Ancients to deal double damage. This is going to be key. Because we're only going to be running 2 legendary weapons, we actually are going to need to make sure we get a little bit of masterworking into this so that we have a 100% chance to deal double damage. For the first dual wield weapon, we're going to be running Doombringer. You want the GA in max life, and you want 3 masterworking crits in max life if you can get it. As you guys can see, my character is not even close to done. I have masterworking all over the place. The GAs are in the wrong spot. So this is working right now just like this, and I am so excited to get it online. For the other weapon, we're going to be running Edge Masters. I was lucky enough to find a 24% Edge Masters. If not, anyway, the 20% will be fine. We're going to be at almost max Fury every single time that we cast. For the affixes, we're going to be running max life, strength, and overpower damage. And then again, same thing for the Tempers. We're going to be running overpower damage and then chance for Hammer of the Ancients to deal double damage. Between the two here, we're actually running 90% increased chance. So really all we need is just 1 masterworking crit into this here, and I think that we'd be at 100%. It would be really close. For the slashing weapon, we're going to be running the Grandfather. Again, the ultimate choice here is going to be max life. That's where you want to put your masterworking crits, and that is also where you want your GAs, if you get lucky enough to get it. For the ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Red Fury. Attack speed, critical strike damage is going to be your GAs. What this is going to do, and why this is so important, after you spend 100 Fury, which is 1 Hammer of the Ancients and 1 Whirlwind, which means 100% of the time we'll be spending 100 Fury, your next Hammer of the Ancients is guaranteed to critical strike. We're also going to get up to a 60% increased critical strike damage bonus. We will crit 100% of the time with no crit. If you look at my crit chance right here, we're running 43%, so it's very low. So this is going to be very, very key. Your affix is going to be incredibly important. So find a high affix. Don't worry about the GAs quite as much. Attack speed and critical strike damage are important, but we want to make sure that that critical strike damage bonus, the multiplicative number, is the highest priority for this. For the other ring, we're going to be running Earth Strikers. This is going to be important too, because after swapping a weapon 8 times, your next non-basic skill will overpower and deal 30% increased overpowered damage. Why this is important: Whirlwind cannot overpower. That means that every single time that we guarantee an overpower, it will be on Hammer of the Ancients. That is super key to this build, and that's why we're running Whirlwind with Hammer of the Ancients instead of any other ability. All other abilities can overpower. Whirlwind cannot. It makes this build perfect. For the affixes here, I actually didn't want that overpower damage. I wanted max life, attack speed, chance to make enemies vulnerable. The GA on chance to make enemies vulnerable is actually the most important part of this. It's the only reason I'm still reusing this, because I needed this. This was the only one that I found so far. That is going to let us make everything vulnerable and keep everything vulnerable, because Hammer of the Ancients has a very high lucky hit chance. If you look here, we're running 50% lucky hit chance on Hammer of the Ancients, compared to Whirlwind, which is only 20%. Because we have such a high lucky hit chance, we proc a lucky hit all the time, and 92% of those lucky hits that we proc will make the enemies vulnerable. Or the Tempers, we're going to be running Brawling cooldown reduction and then critical strike damage. Why we're running Brawling cooldown reduction? Leap is a brawling skill, and so is Warcry. This is going to give us increased reduction to both of these. The more points that you put into Warcry doesn't actually decrease the cooldown, it just increases the damage. So now we have basically no cooldown on Leap, and I have very, very little cooldown on Warcry. For the other Temper, we're going to be running critical strike damage, and then again, follow the planner because this may all switch to overpower damage. Haven't figured it out yet. For the Amulet, we're going to be running the Banished Lord's Talisman. Most important GA on this is going to be the max life, and then the damage bonus is absolutely 100% important. I would rather run a 60% with no GAs than a 20% with all GAs. The damage bonus is very, very important because that is a multiplier that regardless of what the GAs are, it's going to take all of your damage and then continue to multiply that overpower damage. So what the Banished Lord's Talisman does. after you spend 275 of your primary resource, your next core skill is guaranteed to overpower. After we spend 275, Whirlwind cannot overpower, so Hammer of the Ancients is guaranteed to overpower, and we get that 60x multiplicative increased damage here. That's the gear. Let's go over the gems, the runes, and the expertise. For the gems, play this by ear, see what you need. Right now, I'm currently capped, and I'm capped. That's exactly where I want to be at. But I am running Harlequin's Crest, so I do have the extra armor here, and I have one masterwork into it. If we need to swap this around and put more points in your Paragon board to increase your resistances, so you can put more skulls in, do that. Play it how your character needs it. For the weapons, this is also subject to change. We may put overpower damage into here, but for now we have critical strike damage from the emeralds. Inside of the weapon, we're going to be running Pak Zal. When we spend maximum resources, which we're going to spend very quickly, we're going to be gaining 20% increased life. Now remember, increased life is increased damage. Inside of the pants, for the other runes, we're going to be running Tam Cry. What this is going to do is casting a core skill is going to cast Vortex. I'm running Vortex for quality of life, the pull in and grab everything in together and then smash the hammer down on that group of monsters. It's just so nice to run. You can slowly drag monsters back with Vortex as you're running through the pits. It makes your quality of life way higher. You can run something like the Druid Bulwark. It is completely up to you what you want to run here, but this is what I'm doing and I'm absolutely loving it. For the rest of the gems, we're going to be running all of the strength gems in your rubies. It's going to give you a huge amount of strength, which is also going to be skill damage here. For the expertise, we're going to be running the two-handed axe. The way that expertise works, you do not have to have a two-handed axe equipped in order to get the benefit of it. This is going to give us 10% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and that's a multiplicative. And for the Mercenary, I am actually going to be running Subo for this. We're running Subo because we're going to be able to get a 25% increase multiplicative damage here. Now that is on a 20-second cooldown, which is more than Rahir. I don't need the armor from Rahir. I don't need the Fortify from it. And it is on a 15x damage, and that is on a 25-second cooldown. So I'm running with Subo here, and then we're running Variana as our secondary. We have it tied to Bloodthirst. This is going to give us 10% increased attack speed, and that's going to be for 7 seconds. So every time that we use Hammer of the Ancients and that is off cooldown, we get that 10% increased attack speed. So those are the Mercenaries. So that's the setup. Let's look at the gameplay loop and how this is going to work. Now, Fury. You have several different ways to get your Fury generated, right? Because right now, we cannot cast a single skill. We're running to Bolt's Will. To Bolt's Will, every time that we become unstoppable, we're going to gain 50 primary resources. That 50 is also going to get multiplied by our Fury generation. So if we look at the Fury generation here, we have 36%. So we're going to get more than 50. We can become unstoppable by simply casting Rallying Cry. When we cast Rallying Cry, we get 201 Fury. Because we're berserking, we're getting that 16% from Prolific Fury. So making anything that makes us unstoppable is going to give us our Fury. Now we have enough to start our attacks. You can also use Leap. When we leap, we generate our Fury back. So those are going to be your starting to get into the dungeon. When you start, you're either going to become unstoppable or you're going to be leaping into a target. This is your Berserk right here. Berserk is going to give us increased damage and then movement speed. That is up all of the time. But as you see, we're slowly losing Fury because we're not in combat and because we're running Anger Management. Anger Management takes away 2 Fury per second. When you run this build, how this works, I typically run it on a controller just for the ease. You can do it on a mouse and keyboard. It is perfectly doable, but for this, I generally run with a controller. You're going to use Whirlwind, and then you're going to use Hammer. Whirlwind, Hammer. If you watch the Fury, every time we swap, we're getting back Fury. Now, what you can do is you just hold down your Whirlwind button, and then you just start hammering. You can move backwards and move forwards with whichever key you're using. Then you just maintain the Fury. It actually is really nice because if there's stuff dropping on the ground, I can slowly move out of the way, and then I can still continue to attack. If you notice, everything is still vulnerable. As we pop all of our cooldowns, you're going to see Yen's Blessing constantly popping Warcry, because that's the only shout that I have on cooldown right now. So you just keep on doing this pattern back and forth. We don't ever run out of Fury. You keep on popping all of your cooldowns. The things die, and Hammer of the Ancients is back, and I'm so excited about it. I hope that you guys love the build. I love this build. This is a one throwback from Season 2. I'm live every single night. Stop by Theorycraft with me. Say hi. Catch you on the clip side.